This week, picking a new mayor for Wyandotte County. Joe Reardon has been the county's visible face for the better part of the last decade, but now he's calling it quits. On Tuesday, voters will be asked to decide who they want to see take his place. And it all comes down to one of two people. Hello, I'm Nick Haynes, and this half hour we've dumped our regular cast of reporters to give you a chance to size up those two individuals who believe they have what it takes to lead Wyandotte County, the unified government of Wyandotte County in Kansas City, Kansas. Who do you visualize fist bumping along with Kansas City, Missouri Mayor Sly James signing the next big development deal in Wyandotte County, or meeting with reporters to address an important pressing new development in downtown Kansas City, Kansas? Is it Mark Holland, a United Methodist minister who's no stranger to the inner workings of local government? He's served as a Wyandotte County Commissioner for the past 6 years. His opponent is Ann Murguia, who's also served on the County Commission for 6 years. She's Executive Director of the Argentine Neighborhood Development Association, a Kansas City, Kansas-based non-profit. Let me start with you, Mark. I'm at the grocery store. I happen to bump into you with my shopping cart, and you're now trying to convince me in 30 seconds or less why I need to vote for you, and you tell me what?
My typical knock on the door speech is
knock on the grocery store
knock
cart.
on the grocery cart is I'm Mark Holland. I'm fourth generation Wyandotte County, third generation pastor in Kansas City, Kansas. I've served on the commission for the last 6 years and very excited about the growth and development in our hometown and looking forward to leveraging that to continue to develop the other parts of our city that need more help.
And I'm now looking at the cereals at this point in time, and I run into you, Ann Murguia, and
Yes.
I bump into you with my cart with my kids next to me, and you tell me what in 30 seconds or less?
I tell you, I'm also been on the commission for 6 years, and I believe that I have the experience and results to carry all of Wyandotte County forward with great economic development, not just the western portion of our community.
Now, Steve Kraske, writing in the Kansas City Star this week, characterized the race this way. He says this: status quo or shake things up? That's the question voters are going to be deciding. Holland is pitched as the candidate who will set the same steady at-the-wheel tone as outgoing Mayor Joe Reardon. Murguia is described as offering a more aggressive, high-octane approach. Did you bristle when you read that, Mark Holland, or did you read the stories that are written about you?
I didn't bristle at all. I think there is a balance that when you think of status quo, if you're not going anywhere, the status quo is bad. And Kansas City, Kansas right now is on a huge upward trajectory. And if you've asked anyone who's mentioned Wyandotte County or Kansas City, Kansas in the last 2 years, they've probably said, I can't believe it. And it's just a very exciting time. So the status quo right now is a trajectory of progress and improvement. And we need to continue to leverage that progress because there's a lot of areas of our city that haven't received the same benefits as the growing areas. But imagine trying to take on the challenges of the urban areas without that economic engine going on. So we need to keep that economic engine moving unabated and leveraging that to continue to plant development in other parts of our city.
Now, how about the description of you, though, then, described as offering a more aggressive, high-octane approach, then, Ann Murguia?
Yeah, I think that's pretty accurate. I'm very aggressive when it comes to economic development, especially in those hard-to-develop areas. I think you really have to be. What you can't rely on is traditional government methods for marketing those areas. They just aren't areas where regular retailers or developers are normally attracted to. So what you have to do is really have a marketing plan and get out there and shake hands and talk to people and introduce them to parts of Wyandotte County that really haven't gotten a lot of attention in decades, frankly.
But what about then the description rubs people the wrong way in her efforts to boost the fortunes of her Argentine neighborhood?
Well, either he is talking to my children, or I would disagree with that. I think that at times, you know, you have difference of opinion with people. I think that's typical of all of us, not just me. But I wouldn't necessarily say that it is something that happens often. I will tell you I've had differences of opinions with people, but not anything that happens on a regular basis.
Mark Holland, in your campaign materials and on the campaign trail, you say you've been voted in twice as the at-large candidate representing the county. You, Ms. Murguia, have represented a district, and you're sort of defined as being this candidate from the Argentine neighborhood. You know, Are there concerns that you're not going to be able to transcend representing that one area of the county?
No, I don't really have any concerns. First of all, the 3rd district...
How about voters, though? Are they going to think, you're good at representing that area, but are you going to represent the rest of us?
No, I don't think that they should have any concerns there. I think that, first of all, I want you to know that the 3rd district is made up of 2 neighborhoods, Argentine and Rosedale. And we've had amazing success in Rosedale, especially on the 39th and Rainbow Boulevard corridor, where we have the largest urban economic development project that Wyandotte County has seen in decades in that area. So we're very excited about what's going on in Rosedale and the active involved community groups. In regard to my ability to, transfer from an in-district commissioner to county-wide, I really believe my experience in the 3rd district and my success with economic development in one of the most challenging areas of Wyandotte County is perfect for moving me to county-wide so that I can begin to focus on those areas that have been neglected for a long period of time in those areas of greatest need right now. I think I'm absolutely have proven that I have the experience and the results to move those areas forward.
How about you, Mark Holland? Some people are going to look at you and say, you're a minister. That's excellent. Because they'll see a minister as somebody, a man of integrity, but others will look at a little bit, there's a little bit of concern there. A minister may have problems for some people. How will you being a minister, your faith in any way intrude in your views and what you will bring to the mayor's office?
Well, my hope would be that everybody's faith would intrude on what they bring to work every single day. That hopefully our faith brings an integrity and an ethic that influences the way we act. I quote St. Francis of Assisi all the time. Preach the gospel every day and only use words if necessary. I think the way we live our life, life of integrity, matters. But I think Kansas City, Missouri had a good example where a United Methodist pastor was the mayor of this city. Emmanuel Cleaver was a tremendous inspiration to this community and certainly was able to do the similar process of what I'm going to do. I'm going to turn over all the administration to a team, just preach on Sunday, and have my full-time attention on the city and in the mayor's office. If I could be half the inspiration, half the leader that Emmanuel Cleaver has been for his city, for my city, I'd count my term as a success.
Ann McGeer mentioned the work that she has done on the east side of Kansas City and has had this record. In fact, in her campaign material says she's the only candidate that has been involved in successfully redeveloping one of Wyandotte County's most challenging areas of our urban core. That is one of the concerns today in Wyandotte County. We've seen all of this growth on the western side.
Absolutely.
What are you going to do then on that eastern side of Wyandotte County, and what is your track record to show that you're going to do anything to improve the lot in life of folks who are living there, Mr. Holland?
Well, this is important. I mean, it's everything that we're able to do successfully, we do as a team. I mean, it takes a team of elected officials and a team of the employees at the unified government. And really, it takes a leader who can build a collaborative team together who can really work on the pressing issues. We've had good success out west, but we've also had good success at 78th and State, building a new grocery store there. We have success at 18th and I-70, which was a truck stop littered with prostitution and drugs. Able to tear that down and plant a new grocery store there with a lot of ancillary businesses that have grown up. Good development in urban area at 39th and Rainbow across from KU Med. So we've had good success already. What we need to do is multiply that. And the next 2 places that I think we need to multiply the success of urban development is one at the Indian Springs site. Indian Springs, when I was a kid, is where we went to buy all the clothes for school and get ready for our school. It's been long past its useful life for a long time. It needs to be pushed over, and a new development needs to come at that 100 acres at I-70 and 635. The second one is downtown. Downtown Kansas City, Kansas is everybody's downtown. And strategic investment in our downtown has the opportunity to offer a growth model there in our northeast that is desperately needed. So I think we do have a plan to do that.
Okay, so Mark Holland has painted a vision. People have heard it and say, okay, that's reasonable. How is yours different than that? Ann McGeer?
I think the biggest difference when it comes to redeveloping our city or moving our city forward is that I really, truly believe you have to engage the people that live there. And the way that I've been proposing that we do that is that we do a county-wide survey by district. And I don't mean a yes or no survey or what you like or what you dislike, but specifically if people are unhappy with roads in their area, this survey will indicate those areas that they're most unhappy with. I think any time you want to make sustainable change in a community, you have to engage the community. For a long time, our government has sort of in a certain way dictated to the people what is in their best interest. I don't think that that's ever been successful, and I'll give you a couple of examples. Downtown in Wyandotte County, we a few years ago built a Hilton Garden Inn hotel next to the Reardon Center. We also built a new BPU administrative building. And those were supposed to be seeds that were planted in order to begin to foster economic redevelopment in those areas. But if you ask the people that live right in that community day to day, 7 days a week, they would tell you that those have had very little impact on their life, and they value those developments. They don't value those developments. And so I think what first has to happen is we need to ask the people what they want and need, make those things that our constituents value a priority, and budget accordingly. And that's what's going to make the other areas of Wyandotte County successful.
You said that government hasn't done these things, but you are part of the government. I'm going to hold you accountable, both of you, to things that you've already done. Recently, Sporting Kansas City, one of the crown jewels of growth in Wyandotte County, got a PR black eye that played out on the front page of the Kansas City Star when it was revealed that the soccer club had not delivered on a big commitment it made when it took advantage of a $230 million of in-state and local tax subsidies when it built its stadium in Wyandotte County. No inner-city soccer fields the team pledged to build in 2010, and no 18-field youth soccer complex that was supposed to be completed last December. Now, isn't it the responsibility of the unified government to keep on top of this and hold their feet to the fire? Now, you were both on the commission. Why was that allowed to happen?
Well, that's an excellent question. I would say that Sporting Kansas City and Cerner, which are two pieces to an important puzzle in our community, both in our entertainment district and offering new office space in our community, have been terrific partners. And we are working actually right now with a proposal that's going to move that project forward. And so I would say the Star certainly came out and criticized that it hasn't been done. It's not been without discussion. And I would say they are performing as community partners. And what I would rather see is the project's done right than right now. And so I would say that the projects are on track. They may take a different form. They may be shaped a little bit differently. But I think that's part of good government, is being willing to work with your community partners to make sure. Now, if they were just backing out on the deal and saying we're not doing anything, then you have to step in and do the accountability to say, no, that's not right. But they do have a development agreement with us, and they are working with us in terms of that program.
You don't think it's that the unified government is not holding developers' feet to the fire on the agreements that they've made?
No, certainly not. And I think if you look at all the new developments, we've partnered with General Motors. General Motors has delivered on everything they've said they would do. We've partnered with the Hollywood Casino. We've partnered with Cerner. We've partnered with going back to the Speedway and the other legends. These groups have delivered. They're all paying property taxes. The Speedway is the only group out there in the West that's not paying any property taxes. The stadium is paying property taxes.
But they say they would build some urban soccer fields. They didn't. They said they were going to build a youth soccer complex. That did not happen. Isn't that not following through, Ann Murguia?
I think it's not following through. I think what we need to do is definitely hold these developers' feet to the fire.
But you were on the commission. Weren't you asking those questions?
Absolutely. I was absolutely asking those questions, and I have asked repeatedly for updates on those soccer fields and what happened to them. And really, there's not been any response until recently. And I think this is a great example of what happens when the government doesn't know what the community needs and wants. If we were more in touch with our constituents, and we collectively as a full community, as a county, knew what was important to our constituents, I don't think it would take this long to agonize over what kind of fields or what kind of facility our development partners are going to provide.
You were asked in the Kansas City Kansan questionnaire, this is the online newspaper, the Kansas City Kansan, your top concern for the community of Wyandotte County, Ann Murguia, and you were quoted as saying your biggest concern was property taxes and how they were killing families and businesses in the county. And you then said, I'm the only candidate that has never voted for a property tax increase. You can't say the same about your opponent, Mark, who did vote for one. Why does that make a difference in your view?
Well, first, just for clarity, Mark is absolutely correct when he says that I did vote for other tax increases, things like our sewer tax, which is in response to a federal mandate, and a pilot increase, because it was for a very specific service that we were providing. In regard to property tax, that money goes into a general fund, and I really think our government needs to be held more accountable in how our taxpayer dollars are being spent. Okay, so I really believe also that if we want to create jobs, truly create jobs and economic development, and bring businesses to Wyandotte County, that if we continue to raise our property tax rate, it is going to get so out of control. We're already the 4th highest property tax rate in the entire state, that we're eventually going to lose interest from those businesses. And I think it's going to have a very negative impact on this great success we've had out west, and it's going to limit our ability to do other kinds of development countywide.
Now, there was a reason, though, you voted for the property tax increases, though, Mark.
Yes, we'd lost this much value in our valuations through the recession, and every city across the country experienced the same thing. So dramatic that Overland Park, which never raises its property tax, raised its property tax nearly 25%. So we had huge losses in our valuation, and we had a decision to make. We had already frozen hires and reduced the number of employees at the unified government by 15%. We had already frozen salaries with no cost of living increase for our employees for 4 years. We had already done furloughs for our non-public safety, which was the equivalent of a 6% pay cut. And yet we came through this recession, and we had a commitment to not lay anyone off, and we still had an $8 million gap. This much loss in valuation, by capturing some of that loss in the mill levy, we had the opportunity to not lay anybody off. It's the absolute last thing anyone wants to do. But I trust as the property values go back up, we'll pull that back down. But more importantly, there were 120 jobs on the line. All of these are residents of Wyandotte County. And half of our employees are public safety. We would have been taking 30 police officers and 30 firefighters off the street. And that's unacceptable in the midst of a crisis. To make those kind of dramatic cuts to a department in the midst of a 3-year budget crisis, I think is unacceptable. So we have a plan where, as the values return from the pre-recession areas, clearly we're going to pull that back down. But to make that, I think the importance of being in office is that you need to be running the city, not running for your next election. And you have to be clear that when push comes to shove, a last-ditch possibility, I valued people's jobs, and I feel very good about that.
How do you respond to that?
I completely disagree. I think that's one of the problems, and that's exactly why, one of the reasons why I ran for mayor. I think our mayor needs to have a vision that creates more than 2 options: lay people off or raise taxes. I think we have a lot more options in Wyandotte County. One, I've said over and over again, we have to determine how the people of our county want to see their tax dollars spent. We cannot be everything to everybody. And I think that public safety obviously agrees with me. Police department, fire department, union, both endorsed me. IBEW with BPU endorsed me as well. I think those people attended those meetings. They saw what I was fighting for, and I really do believe we could have kept those public safety officers. We didn't need to raise taxes. We could have determined those priorities and budgeted accordingly.
Were there other options, Mark Holland?
Obviously there weren't other options, and so it was a decision. When 80% of your budget comes from salaries, when 80% of the unified government budget is people money, it's salaries and benefits. If you're going to make up $8 million, there's precious few places that can come from. And it's going to come from salaries. It's going to come from people's jobs. And I just think that we had a budget hearing session. I mean, Joe Reardon put together this budget with the administrator, and we had a whole series of opportunities to come up with other options. And no other options were presented. There weren't any other options presented from the commissioners who ended up voting against it. And so when we came down to the wire and it was time to think about people's jobs, I think in Wyandotte County, we value people's jobs. All the employees at the unified government are residents of our city. We already had the highest foreclosure rate in the area. I didn't want to add another 120 families into the crisis. And as you've seen, the recession is receding. It is getting better, not fast enough for any of us. But as we made through, we helped get 120 of our own families through a recession, and I think that was the right thing to do. And clearly, there's no question we're going to pull that back down.
To get a better sense of who these 2 candidates are, we asked them to come to the studio with one image. one photograph that would help us better understand who they are, a photo that would sum up their candidacies. By the way, when we asked Mark Funkhauser to do this, he picked an image of Abraham Lincoln. When Sly James was running, he picked a photograph of himself on the high school football team when he was the only black student in a sea of white faces. Mark Holland, you selected this photo. Why?
I selected that picture because that's my family. And when I think about Wyandotte County, I think about my family. Fourth generation Wyandotte County. My grandfather on my mom's side graduated from Argentine High School in 1930. My dad graduated from Argentine High School in 57. My other grandfather attended Washington, then Rural High School. When I think of my work in Wyandotte County, I'm thinking not just about my great-grandparents who came here for job opportunities 4 generations ago. I'm thinking about my great-grandchildren and my children growing up in this community and the opportunity to build the kind of community that we would all be proud of and that my kids want to go off to school and then come back and raise their families in. So when I chose my family picture, it's because it's close to my heart when I think about public service, that I do it for my family and I do it for the opportunity for all the children in our community.
Anne Murguia, which photo image did you select?
My family as well.
Okay, well, let's take a look at this. Here we go. The Anne Murguia clan.
Yes.
Tell us about your family.
Well, you know, I have to say I agree with Mark. You know, I think that family is very important. It's the most important thing to me. And the way I sort of manage my district as a commissioner is I manage that as if I am, you know, have the best interest of everyone's family at hand. I think Wyandotte County is made up of families just like mine that want good things for their families and want great opportunities for their children. And that's why I think it's a great symbol of what I represent, is the average American family.
And it's interesting that Joe Reardon, one of the reasons why he decided not to run for re-election was he said he wanted to spend more time with his family. Right. And yet both of you have got pictures there with lots of young children around you. Aren't you concerned that this is going to be taking so much of your time away from those young children?
You know, I've said a number of times the last thing Wyandotte County needs is another fatherless home.
All right.
So I'm very, very confident that we'll be able to balance that, either one of us, should we become mayor.
You know, one of the big stories in the news this week, you know, plans to shutter the almost 100-year-old downtown YMCA in Kansas City, Kansas, one of the very few recreational facilities in KCK. It's causing wailing and gnashing of teeth and a Facebook campaign to try and save it, as a controversial plan to shutter 3 neighborhood Ys in the metro is unveiled in order to make way for a brand new downtown Kansas City, Missouri facility. The mayor of Raytown is angry and calling for an extension on the April closing plans. Are you actively lobbying the YMCA to reconsider their plans in KCK? Or do you not think that's a role befitting of your office, Anne Murguia?
Oh, absolutely. I've had a conversation with our mayor about the Y and the issues around that, and it's very important to our community. And actually, right after this interview, we'll be attending a meeting with our mayor to discuss what the options are. I think that facility is very important.
Mark Holland.
Absolutely very important. One of the top priorities that I have are community recreation centers that serve our youth and serve our seniors, as well as the business community downtown. So it's a high priority of mine, and certainly we need to be working actively on this, and she's right, we have a meeting after this.
Outgoing Mayor Joe Reardon is credited during his time in office for bringing Google Fiber to Kansas City, retaining the GM Fairfax plant, seeing the completion of Sporting Kansas City Park under his watch, and the promise of 4,000 jobs from Cerner in an office park right next door. What would you like to be credited for doing if you're elected the mayor of Wyandotte County on Tuesday, Mark Holland?
I would like, you know, I'd like to be credited. The city that Carol Marinovich inherited was a very different city than we have now. The opportunities that Joe Reardon had were so many more because of the work that she had already done. And I think the city that we will inherit will have so many more opportunities than even the one Joe Reardon inherited because of the cumulative success that we've had. So I'd want to be known as the person who continues this economic engine that's continuing to bring new housing to Wyandotte County in all parts of our city, that's continuing to bring new businesses, and not only the large businesses, but also the small business infrastructure, which took such a hit over the last 30 years. The mayor that continued to reinvest for all of the citizens in some of the most challenging areas. I would be very proud to be known as the mayor that really took Kansas City, Kansas to the next level.
Ann Muggia.
Well, as I've said before, I'd like to take, my experience as an urban redeveloper and my successes in that arena, and I would definitely like to take that countywide. As people have said, we have this great momentum in the Village West area, and we're known regionally for our comeback city and for the things that we've been able to do out there. But we have other areas, whether that be Turner or Leavenworth Road or Midtown or the northeast area of our community, that also have great things to offer the entire region. And I think we definitely need a mayor that has the ability and the skill set to be able to redevelop those very challenging areas.
And that's where we need to wrap up this program. Our thanks to Mark Holland and Ann Muggia, one of whom on Tuesday will be elected by you as the next mayor of Wyandotte County. Join my colleague and Kansas City, Kansas resident Mike Shannon for Ruckus Sunday morning at 11:30. They will have their own take on this mayor's race. I'm Nick Haynes. From all of us here at KCPT, thanks for spending part of your weekend with us.